We're going to talk about indirect discourse and all sorts of indirect expression in this unit as we look at Caesar, and in Latin 3 as you are looking at various Caesar lines pulled out of context. There are four basic things that are happening with indirect discourse. You can have indirect thought, which is something that you're thinking, but that is being reported that you were thinking. There's indirect statement, things that are reported that were said. You can have indirect question, which you've seen a number of times, and hopefully even a little bit from last year. In theory, you remember from Latin 2, when you have a subjunctive following a question word embedded in a sentence that says, Caesar was asking how they were getting there. And you can have indirect command, which again uses the subjunctive following an ut or ne, and it's issuing a command. We're going to start by focusing on our indirect statement, because it is the easiest of all of them, along with indirect thought. So, to that end, we need to be able to compare direct versus indirect. Now, direct is our standard bearer of the 10th Legion standing up and saying, I will perform my duty to the emperor, and I will, not hand over the eagle to the enemy. That's a direct statement. It's got the quotation marks that we all know and love. And your Cambridge series has used this sort of construction all the time. Achilles is always saying something to someone, or Metella is ordering someone to do this sort of thing. We have those quotation marks everywhere. In Latin, though, since so little of it was actually directly said outside of theater, most everything is indirect statement. So it's someone reporting something else that they've said. And they have notes that go through all of this, but let's look through just a couple things. Let's say we're going to say that Caesar, is it large enough? Yes, Caesar says that, and in English we always have that word that. Caesar says that he is not going to the Senate today, So in English, what we have are really two sentences. We have our Caesar says sentence, and then we have our he is not going to the Senate today. If these were actually in direct discourse, we would have Caesar says, comma, quotation marks that he is not going to the Senate today, rather than having the word that. In Latin, if we want to say this with indirect discourse, we need to have our verb of Caesar says. So I'm going to use deco for most of my examples, and then I'm going to move over to using loquor and thautor. Sorry, not thautor, but for, so that we can see those deponent verbs more frequently. So we have our main ones, so Caesar, dicit, Caesar says, and then there's no word for that. There are no quas, no qualms, no uts, no nays, nothing weird like that, no quins, no little introductory words. We just go straight from Caesar dixit. And then here's the fun part. An accusative pronoun or accusative word for anything that's going to be our subject. So since we said Caesar said that he, we need to use the reflexive pronoun say, that he is not going. So our verb for to go is ire. Since we're saying he's not, we're going to have to throw in a non. And then he is not going to the Senate, senatum hodie today. Everything else stays the same. A prepositional phrase is still a prepositional phrase. It still is followed by its ablative or its accusative depending on the preposition. Adverbs are still adverbs. Hodie does not have to change in the least. The only thing that's different is that what the thought is, or the statement is, or the indirect anything is, our subject goes in the accusative and our verb goes into the infinitive. And this is why it's so important to know all of the different infinitive forms, because it's going to start dictating our tense. So if we're just saying Caesar says that he is not going to the Senate today, but we want to change that to Caesar says that he will not go to the Senate today, then we have to use one of those wonderful little future. Remember we were talking about future forms, that participle, that form of the verb to be. So Caesar says that he is not fixing to go to the Senate today, if we can use our Southern dialect on that one, is not going to go to the Senate today, is not intending to go to the Senate today, are all possible translations for this. We know that it's future because we have our It's fine that we translate like future just because our main verb is still just a dicit, sorry. Now, if we want to say that Caesar says that he did not go to the Senate today, this is where it has to get a little more difficult. We have to use a perfect infinitive, and I don't think that y'all saw any of these last year, and I don't think we've seen any of them that I've pointed out to us thus far. So since it is perfect, we are going to have to use our perfect stem, which, since I'm not using the verb to speak with him here, sorry. And then we're going to add that ise. And of course, we'll throw in our non, so then since he's not going to the Senate today. This is frustrating for students because it still has that SSE, that ISSE in the middle of a verb. This looks an awful lot like a superlative form for students who are only bothered with focusing on certain letters within each word to try and make them remember which one it is. So it looks like a superlative, but how are you going to know it's not one? Well, let's start with the obvious. It's on a verb. So if you know your principal parts of your verbs and you know this is a verb stem and not any sort of adjective stem, then there's no way it can be a superlative. It can only be an infinitive with a verb. Please be careful with this. As we see these sort of forms, I'll be pointing them out to you. Now, it can get more confusing than this. If we change our main verb from Caesar says to Caesar said, then all the tenses have to shift. So we are already in the past tense. If we put that he, I'm going to put my non and then my ere here, that he is not going, then what we actually have here is that Caesar said that he was not going. Because if this is in present tense, that really just means it's present tense relative to our main tense verb. And this is a very difficult thing called relative time. It's helpful if you just think about always translating your main clause first, focusing on that tense. Is it present tense? Is it past tense? Very seldom will you see a future tense. If it's present tense, then all your tenses are normal with your infinitive. If it's past tense, then everything shifts back. So if we were then to have that, let me keep my color coding the same here. If we had that say, we say, and put that non in there, then we're going to have to say, Caesar said that he had not gone. We suddenly have to make our perfect a pluperfect tense verb. And if we were to put our future in there, Caesar said that he told esse. Let me make those look like two separate words since they actually are two separate words. And that non in there. Caesar said that he would not go, will not go. That one actually gets to stay somewhat the same, but it has a slightly more ambiguous sort of tone to it. The same exact stuff happens with indirect thoughts. So instead of saying Caesar said, if we say Caesar, use puto here, Caesar thinks that he will not, or that he is not going to the Senate today. Caesar thinks that he did not go to the Senate today. Caesar thinks that he will not go to the Senate today, but will be convinced later to flee his house and go and get killed. Again, if we are in present tense, everything gets to stay normal. The moment we switch this to something like putavat, then this has to become Caesar was thinking that he was not going to the Senate today. Caesar was thinking that he had not gone to the Senate today, but then he realized it was all a dream. Caesar was thinking that he would not go to the Senate today, but then his wife annoyed him and he fled. Sorry, the camera lapsed for a moment. Any of these tenses will just shift a little bit based on whatever that main tense verb is. So we have some notes and there's some practice on that. I want you to give it a whirl, and if you get things wrong, that's okay. It's the first time through. As we keep on going and looking at this, so you do want to start paying very, very close attention to this. For my AP students, this is one of the things that they harp on in their results about the AP exam. Students not keeping tenses straight within indirect discourse. For Latin 3, it's a good skill to have. I'm not saying it's going to be on your final. I'm not saying it's not going to be on your final. I'm not saying that it's something that you can shrug off, but it is something we are going to be seeing an awful lot right now. I've pulled Caesar lines for the Latin 3s to do just because the next story is all weird dialogue. So we may take some lines of it and change it into indirect discourse, but right now I really just think it'd be better if we looked at some Caesar. So please bring questions with you tomorrow in class from what we've seen here, any sort of questions you may have about what's going on with the tenses. Look at the notes and compare what they say with what it is I'm saying here, and we'll see what we can do to elaborate them. Thank you for trying our first little video, and we'll see how it goes. Have a good evening. Bye. Well, late even.